The EFF in KwaZulu-Natal says the appointment of portfolio committees in the provincial legislature now was conducted in an undemocratic manner. The Red Berets say the delay in establishing this committee constitutes a breach of the constitutional requirement. The legislature appointed the committees nearly 4 weeks after Speaker Nontembeko Boyce was re-elected. KZN Legislature Secretary Nerusha Naidoo joins us now for more. Nerusha, good to have you, and thank you very much for your time this evening. Is there a particular reason why the Speaker would have failed to sit within the stipulated 7 working days?
Good evening, and thank you for having me on your program. Yes, there is a reason. It's this election result is very different from all previous election results. So we have rules that have to be implemented, but it was very difficult to implement these rules because of the proportionality issue. The committees have to reflect proportionality of in substantially the same way as the House, and it also has to make sure that it provides for participating of the minority parties. So the configuration of the KZN legislature in this election is 41-39. It becomes very difficult to divide that and get the proportionality and the participation of minorities in substantially the same order as is in the legislature. And so a lot of work had to go into the configuration and understanding of that.
Right.
There is a rule 195,
yeah,
that talks to establishment within 7 days, but there were challenges because the outcome of the elections and the first sitting took place just before the public holiday, and there were the inauguration of the premier, the inauguration of the president. So all of that contributed to the delay, but fundamentally the big issue was configuring the portfolio committees in a manner that was constitutionally accurate, and that needed some deliberation with the legal team before we could put the whole package to the legislature.
What was the transparency in the communication of that messaging? Because it seems not only the EFF but the MK party raised a similar complaint around Rule 195 and how it was not adhered to.
Yes, there was transparency. The Speaker is the chief presiding officer of the House. The Speaker also is responsible for political management. So administration had to work through all of the rules as a package before presenting it to the Speaker and the Deputy Speaker. When that was done, the Speaker called a meeting of all political party leaders to explain the challenges that were coming to bear and what needed to happen. There was a whole lot of technicalities that needed. We presented a 32-page document to party leaders, including the EFF, the MK, the ANC, the IFP, the DA, and the NFP, and took them through all of the processes. There were challenges in terms of the definition of the chief whip of the majority that was exposed to interpretation. The chief whip of the deputy chief whip, the chief whip of the largest minority party. So there were a whole host of issues that were brought to the attention of the party leaders so that there could be understanding as to what was going to happen on the second sitting.
So why would other parties have opted to walk out of that particular sitting because they felt that their voices were not being considered by the Speaker?
I can't speak for parties, but I do. I was in the House and I did hear the issue that was raised for a caucus. The Speaker, in terms of the rules, there is no provision to allow the House to adjourn for a caucus, but also you have to think about what are the ramifications of taking that decision as a precedent for going forward. So that was one of the challenges, but I think the big issue was the parties understanding that the rule around 195, establishment of committees within 7 days, was something they were not happy with. But before we could, as the legislature, provide the report so that they could deliberate on it, the procedural discussions frustrated parties, and I think that was the reason why they walked out. The challenge is that in terms of the rules, it's adopted in the first sitting. It's adopted as a guide to give some order, but we could not become slaves to the rules because we also had to implement it in a way that made sense.
Yeah.
So notwithstanding the fact that our rules provide for the establishment of committees within 7 days, and it was impossible to do that bearing in mind the time period when it was, when the results came out and what unfolded thereafter. It also allows for the speaker to make a ruling for an eventuality that was not determined or preconsidered. So the legal team had advised the speaker and the party leaders of what processes would need to be undergone to regularize that. And I think that was giving the MK particularly some difficulty with understanding the regularization process, because if we continued to just establish committees within the 7 days, it would have been malicious compliance. What is very important is that those portfolio committees are responsible for oversight over the executive in charge of those portfolios.
Yeah.
There was also the issue that community safety is aligned to the Premier's responsibility now. And so the legislature had to understand before it even established a committee whether that was going to be a joint committee or two separate committees.
Yeah.
The same for human settlements and transport. So the challenge is you could be maliciously compliant and establish the committees, but you would not have done it properly. And so that consultation had to happen with political parties so that they could understand that. And when that is presented in the House, then political parties would debate those issues and fundamentally vote on it at the end of the day. That the MK walked out prior to that decision even taking place. So I think the frustration was around process rather than the substance, and understanding the issues around why there was that delay and the complications around that delay.
So we'll talk about the implications of that walking out. But you've already mentioned the fact that you are in a precarious position for the first time, where the House is split 41-39. And the MK party says there seems to have been a move by the Speaker to unilaterally alter established rules of how to set up these committees without due process or consultation.
The Speaker acted in terms of the rules that are currently in operation. There is a rule that allows for the Speaker to make a ruling for an eventuality that has not been considered or provided for. We've explained why that was the case, and the Speaker acted on legal advice. The Speaker didn't act independently. Prior to taking the matters before the House, the legal team provided legal guidance on how to address the issues. And so it wasn't Speaker exercising discretion, it was legal advice provided to the Speaker taking it to the political party leaders. And you will see that the rules itself, there is no provision for political party leaders and consultation. There is provision for whips taking charge, but the rules itself could not be implemented rigidly, because the rules, as I say, were there to give guidance, but with the structures that we have currently, we cannot implement all of those rules. So in that instance, the Speaker has to make a ruling. The rules empower the Speaker to do so, or the Speaker has to take it to the House, and the House by resolution can amend the rules. So that process was going to unfold in the House on Tuesday. And before that process could unfold, that walkout occurred.
So you're saying where we're sitting now, the rules were not amended?
The rules were amended in terms of the resolution that was taken in the House on Tuesday.
Yes.
It was amended.
It was amended,
because we still had a quorum, and the parties that remained in the House voted in support of those amendments.
So in terms of those processes, you're saying even with, I mean, they say about 45% of those seats not occupied by MK party, you could still go ahead and make those amendments with those who were present in the House?
Yes. There were 41 members present in the House, so there was a quorum, but notwithstanding, even the quorum for the amendment of the rules is 27. But there were 41 members in the House, so that those rules were legitimately and procedurally amended.
Do you see this process of appointing being challenged in the court successfully? Because they're saying procedurally the appointment of these portfolio committee members or chairpersons is unlawful, and therefore MK Party saying they will be, I suppose, going the court route.
Look, the advice that was put before the Speaker was legally considered. So whenever we act, we act in the best interests of the legislature, and we act thinking about how a court would interpret our actions. And so we are confident that whatever we advise the Speaker and the members of the legislature to do for the second sitting, it will stand up in a court of law, and we will stand by the decisions that we made in guiding the speakership as well as the institution.
Nerusha, we appreciate your time. Thanks so much for coming on. Nerusha Naidoo, Secretary of the KZN Legislature, there on the setting up of those committees and the objections, of course, being raised by the EFF as well as the MK Party, claiming that the process was unconstitutional.